Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Contour Community Meeting. Today is December 8th, 2020, and we're going to start with some updates. I think Tong, you want to start us off here?
Sure. It's welcome Sunjay to join our contour team. And Sunjay has been working with the on filter side with the task for Windows. Right now, it's been working with previously before joining us. Been working with the Envoy to port Envoy to support Windows as well. So welcome Sunjay. Glad to have you join the team. Also, Alex, welcome Alex as well.
All right, awesome. Yeah, welcome, Sanjay. Welcome, Alex. Alex is our new PM. He's not on the call right now. He will be in on the future ones, though. Let's move on to Steve Chris.
Yeah, so for those of you who have been following along, I've been looking at rate limiting over the last few weeks, month or so, and I initially wrote up a kind of a background doc that just did some explanation of how rate limiting works in Envoy. Was definitely useful for me to get familiar with it because I hadn't looked at it before, but also to spur some discussion. And so at this point, I've put up a draft of an actual design doc for how to add rate limiting support into Contour. Just put it up yesterday, and so there have been a few comments that have come in from stevesloka and from James to start the discussion. So, first and foremost, for anyone who's interested in this, I would definitely appreciate reviews of the doc and let me know any feedback you have. And I can definitely get into the details of the doc a little bit if we want to.
Yeah, I think for this one too, just to add to what Steve said, is the implementation is easy-ish, but the hard part is coming up with the API to design it. So even if folks just have like, use cases like, hey, I want to use rate limiting to do this, or I want to solve this problem, just to see make sure we haven't lost any use cases and make sure that those can fit into the API. That'd be great too.
Yeah. So I will say that the API that I'm proposing in Contour pretty closely mirrors Envoy's API. So, after looking at it for a while, I didn't really see I didn't see that it made sense for us to build an abstraction over all of the Envoy APIs. Sticking closely to them means that you can take advantage of all of the power of Envoy rate limiting, but it does come with some additional complexity in terms of configuring things. That said, we're certainly open to feedback on this, and the point of having the design doc is to have some discussion on that. So, yeah, for anyone who has opinions, please take a read and comment.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Any questions, comments for Steve?
Just a question. Do we usually write a design doc for every feature?
I would say for every feature that's non-trivial, and we kind of just use our judgment to decide what's big enough to require a design doc. I don't know, stevesloka, you might have more.
Yeah. So the idea is to agree upon the feature, the implementation, and how we're going to approach the problem before we write code. Because the worst part is that you write a bunch of code and then folks don't agree on how it's getting implemented, and you've got to revamp all that, and you go back and forth a lot. So the idea is to have a design in terms of figuring out like Oauth was a great example. How are we going to implement it? How are we going to support it? What are we going to support? That sort of thing, and how does it all get integrated? And then you also have a point in time of understanding why we did it the way we did it. Do you know what I mean? So like, if you're like, well, why do we have this thing? Why do we implement it that way? And then you can go back to this design and see, oh, here's why we decided because of X, Y, and Z. And why didn't we go with the alternative? Well, that's because of X, Y, and Z in there. So yeah, that's the idea. And then our original goal too is to work ahead on these. So you'll see a couple of these coming up that I have they're getting stale, but I got to work on them. But the more designs that we have in the pipeline, like ready to go, then folks can just pick up from there. So you don't have to necessarily like do a whole write a design doc, implement the feature, and then write all that stuff. Someone else can write a doc. Someone else can implement that feature, that sort of thing. So if we have enough of these in the backlog ready to go, and then folks can just pick up work off of those design docs. That makes sense, because I already agreed upon. We've already decided how to do it.
Got it. All right,
That help?
thanks.
Cool.
All right.
So speaking
Sloka.
of, so again, we don't have to walk through these, but I think I talked about some of these in the office hours last week. But there's 2 designs I need to push some updates to. Again, I've been distracted by other things which are further down this list. But this one is handling the issue of if your proxy gets invalid somehow. Today, most of the time, we will error the object out, and you'll lose all that traffic, right? So say if your root HTTP proxy resource has some sort of issue with it, it gets marked invalid, and then all traffic gets thrown away, which is kind of bad. So the idea is that we want to utilize the condition set that we've added. So now at the bottom of every proxy, there's a set of conditions which has errors and warnings. Utilize that to give feedback to users to say, hey, you've set this thing wrong, you set this thing wrong, and then handle those errors in a certain way. So a great example is like if you say you reference a service from a route, and that service either doesn't exist in Kubernetes, or say you typed it wrong or something. We'll set an error today in Contour, but then we'll throw that whole resource out. The idea here is that maybe we could mark it as an error. Hey, you've referenced a service that's invalid. Or I've heard of folks that the service doesn't even exist yet, right? They'll deploy the ingress resource, and later on they'll come back and add the service. In any case, we could have Contour return a 503 for that route instead of airing out the whole thing, right? Because there's something misconfigured with it. So maybe that's what you want, maybe that's what you don't want. So this is a great example of having a design here to see what the behavior is going to be, and then again have folks agree upon it. So a big thing I want to add here are use cases, a use case section. So maybe the 503 makes sense to you, maybe that's bad for you. So I'd be curious to see what folks think about that. And I'm trying to spell out all the different use cases here. So invalid routes, invalid services, invalid includes, that sort of thing. And I think a lot of this will tie into the service APIs work, which we're going to get started on here soon, I believe. So when something goes wrong with that, what does Contour do, right? And then we should be able to document that and move on from there. So that's this one. I need to go spin up some more time into this. And then the other one is a metadata design. So if you ever use Contour with an include with HTTP proxy, there's a use case where if you're a child, say in some of the namespace, and someone includes resources to you, like a path or a set of headers or something, you don't have really a good way to know what's been included to you without knowing who your parent is and seeing that information. So the idea here is to expose more information again in the status field as to what path prefix you've been included and what headers you might have been included. Once we have that on all the objects, then we can drive like an octant dashboard or other different things, so you can understand that. So that was the idea of this. Again, I'm going to add more use cases and more information here, but this was the high level bit for that. And then once we have those 2 things in, then anyone can help pick them up. So that was that thing. So take a look at those. Let me know. I'm curious to see folks' thoughts, and we can go from there. The next thing is the Envoy extension list. I know in the last community meeting, we had a user ask about they wanted to build their own Envoy and then remove all of the extensions that, or filters, extensions that Envoy is using, right? So Contour doesn't use all of the things that are in Envoy. So this way, if you can actually compile them out, so things like the Datadog plugin, right? We don't leverage that anywhere. So in theory, all those different plugins can be, security points of having security issues or CVEs in there. So if you compile those out, then those won't exist. So I'm working on I'm validating that. So I'm compiling Envoy on my own. And I think Chris had a great idea of maybe building our own Envoy image and then using that in our integration tests to run those, because we missed a couple of things. Like when we added Oauth, we didn't add that to the list, and this to help validate that list over time, because it does change. So that might be a good idea. So I'll have to see. I'm looking to see if I can have a GitHub action build me an Envoy. I'm not sure if it can finish or not in time before the free GitHub actions tier runs out of memory or time. So that might be interesting. So that's something else to look at. But in any case, we'll update that list, and then we'll move on to the fancy integration pieces later. And one last thing, and then you'll quit hearing from me, we met with so Abigail is a tech writer here at VMware, and she graciously took a look at Contour. So I'm going to go share these notes that she gave us. But we have some ideas around how to make our documentation and our guides and all the resources, how to make them flow better, how to make them kind of make more sense. So I got a lot of great feedback from her. So we're going to implement some of that stuff here coming up. Again, as well as looking at the service APIs work. There'll be a whole other section of docs going to come in from that. So we have some good ideas on how we can approach, ingress docs, HTTP proxy resource docs, and then service APIs docs, along with the guides and resources and everything. So look to have some of that coming up. And if anyone's interested in writing docs or reorganizing docs, let us know. We have plenty of work there to do.
That's awesome, Steve. For the docs, is the plan to create a kind of a run book for things that needs to be fixed or things that you want to improve?
Yeah, I think so.
Issues.
Yeah, we have got a big Google Doc from Abby
Mm-hmm.
that walks through a bunch of that. So I think we can take that and then make that probably I think maybe one big issue with tasks or something might be easier instead of having them all sprawled apart. We can decide on, are we going to do this, yes or no, and then come up with tasks off of that. So yeah, we can do that.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments for Steve on all the design docs, Envoy extensions? All right. I saw Daniel couldn't join us today, but he did have a question regarding the 1.11.0 release date.
Yeah, I don't know if we've decided on a date. We could do it
probably by end of next week, most probably.
Yeah, we could do it next week.
Yeah,
we could do it.
Yeah, sometime next week, I would say. We don't decide a date yet.
It's either next week or the new year, I think, unless folks in Australia want to help. But I think they're going to be out too. So yeah, let's just say Friday the US 18th.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Is that cool, Steve, Chris, and other folks? Does that make sense?
I mean, yeah, I might try and do it a couple days earlier, just so that we don't do it on the day before we're all going out for 2 weeks. But
yeah, just make sure it's no last minute surprise.
What could happen?
Because the week follow that will be most people will be out after that week. Probably a couple days earlier, either Wednesday or something.
Are there any? I'm trying to look at the project board and see, but are there any big things that we're waiting on for 1.11? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Got the milestone up here.
I think we're bad at using this as well. We
Yeah.
need to get better at that. I've tried. I might write a bot to do this for us, but I think they're all the things I've done are in the 1.11. There's a bunch of PRs. There's a lot of design work that's in there. Your rate limiting stuff probably won't get in by then.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's in there. Even that's all that's interesting for folks, but
I mean, the Envoy, dropping V2 support is really the big thing, and we got that in right after we shipped 1.10.
Yeah. So this will be the first release that only supports V3. So maybe that in itself is a good time to do it, and then.
So I guess, I would almost say maybe we should just try and do it like beginning of next week if there's nothing major we're waiting for, and we can just try and close out a few of the other open things between now and then.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to get the moving the search engine stuff out maybe, so that the operator project can consume that. That'd be good to have it in a tagged release. I have some issues with that, which we can talk about later, but I think we should revamp the API a little bit. So.
Daniel asks this probably because Daniel's plan to we're gonna plan for the contour operator. We're gonna release at the same time, same date.
Yeah, I think he's trying to plan for that.
Yeah.
So we should sync up with him as well to see if there's anything in the operator that's blocking. And then here comes the issue of having them released together. We want to block contour on the operator and vice versa. So, well, I can reach out to him and see what items he may want to get in before the release.
You want to dive into a discussion around OAuth?
I guess this is more of just a question for folks. Like we have external auth in here. So it gives you the plumbing to do auth. So today we the Contour project itself has a basic auth example that you can use. I think you can plug in, there's an OAuth server from Istio that would do OAuth2, but you've got to plumb up an extra service and an extension service and a bunch of configuration and stuff. I didn't know if folks, one, were interested in OAuth2, and then this model is just a filter in Envoy. So by doing this, you wouldn't need all the extra plumbing and extra deployment and extra work to give you Oauth2. It's all baked into Envoy. You just need to configure it. So we'd have to still figure out how to configure it and how to make it, how to pass that information down into, into Envoy itself. But I was just curious if folks were interested in this or not. It seems to me, it looks like it's under development though too, so I'm not sure how production ready it is. But I was just curious. It was more of a, hey, would folks want to use this versus using the full server, or would you rather have the full-blown, external auth service?
Questions, comments?
I mean, to me, and I haven't really looked at this in detail, but it seems like if you're using OAuth, then this is the easier way to get it set up, right? Than using an external auth service.
Yeah, it just has Contour then take on this configuration here. So how do we have an extension service today to represent, I guess you wouldn't need that. You could just, have a config or something maybe. I don't know, because in there you can have different auth servers per domain or something, So we have to figure that out, the API of it at least. But yeah, I agree. I think it's worthwhile to not have to deploy extra things and even develop and code extra things to get this to work. So,
do you have any idea of whether the Envoy project is like looking to add more built-in filters for other authentication mechanisms?
I'm not sure. I think there's a JOT filter as well. It'll validate JOT tokens. Yeah. So that's also another filter that you can add. So if you already have someone passing in a token, and you can validate them here as well. Again, you can do that with your auth server if you wrote it all and built it to do that. So, but you have to do all that work. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in my mind, the benefit of the external auth stuff is that it's highly flexible, right? And you can plug in whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're using one of these things that Envoy has kind of native support for, built-in support for, then it seems easier to use their filters.
I know there are filters coming for like caching as well. So folks are working on, caching out requests and resources and stuff to make that more performant. But I don't believe that's all ready yet. But that's how like the local rate limiting stuff, Steve, in your design doc got implemented as well. It's just a filter off of Envoy, so you don't have to actually deploy anything to get that. You just have to configure it. That's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. And it's way easier. I mean, it's also much more limited in terms of functionality, but as far as deploying and configuring, it's a lot simpler.
Yep, for sure. So that was all. No big deal. If folks are interested, I think there's an issue. If not, I'll open one. Maybe it was in it. It might have been in the auth issue where this came up. So I'll go open a new issue for this, just to track it and discuss and see what folks think, and then go from there.
Sounds good. Does anyone have any other discussion topics for today you want to bring up? All right. So I just want to remind everyone that Steve is doing a talk next Wednesday morning at 11:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Ingress the Gateway to your apps in the Cloud Native Kitchen. So yeah, this is going to be fun. Just wanted to bring this up again, and yeah, we'll remind everyone next Tuesday too.
There's a whole bunch of talks, and the whole day looks kind of cool. So go check it out. It's all free to register for.
If you don't have anything else to do next Wednesday, do this.
Yeah, Jeremy Rickard and folks have a neat talk. They're going to do if you've seen that one, I don't know if you can pop that one up, but they're doing an Iron Chef kind of thing where they're going to pick a tech, I think, at the beginning of the talk, and then try and deploy it or work on it in the talk. So it's kind of cool.
So preferably release not on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Next week. All right. Cool. Well, that's all for today. Thank you all for joining. Have a fantastic rest of the week, everyone, and talk to you all next week. Bye,
Thank
folks.
you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.